Ninjas in Pyjamas are our new world champions, and they had such a journey to get to where they are now. From 2020 runners-up to 2021 champions, they showed what sticking to the mission and sticking together can do for a team. And now look at their reward, the best team in the world. And well deserved, honestly. It's been a hard journey and it hasn't been easy, but that's what it takes to be a champion. Following my last video about the group stages, I wanted to do a playoff video once the tournament had finished about whoever became champion and how they got there, and now knowing that it's Ninjas in Pyjamas, there's some great matches to cover and talk about. Join me on this one as we look at some great comebacks, great plays, and we look at how the Ninjas dominated an upper bracket run. If you go on to enjoy the video, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you want to see more content like this and you're enjoying the videos on the channel, and sit back and enjoy. Let's get straight into it. It started with a baptism of fire for N.I.P as they faced one of the tournament favourites BDS in their first playoff matchup. But honestly, you know what they say, that if you're a real championship team and you have belief in yourself, then you know that it's sometimes better to be able to knock out these bigger teams at an earlier stage or put them at a disadvantage. You're never going to have an easy matchup, especially the way Siege is at the moment. But after a Fragfest 5-7 loss on Coastline against BDS, the Ninjas found themselves a map down heading into a strong BDS map in the likes of Clubhouse, so the pressure was really mounting for them not to be kicked down immediately to the lower bracket. They had a solid 4-2 half on defense, and the pressure was now on to have enough quality in their attacks to prevent a defensive comeback from BDS and shut them out the map. But after BDS managed to bring the score back to an even 4-4, things were looking very nervy for 2020 Invitational runners-up, and they could have easily capitulated and allowed BDS to ride their momentum to a series win. But they showed their elite mentality with 3 decisive attacking wins, forcing BDS to a third map. And that third map was Consulate, a LATAM special, and after the momentum at the back end of map 2, N.I.P seemed set up decisively to take the series. It wasn't looking to play out like that, however, as they found themselves 2-4 down after their defensive half. Not terrible considering the nature of the map, but in recent times and in this tournament, more defensive rounds were being racked up by teams on Consulate, so the pressure was really on, especially trying to displace players like Shaiko, who really shine at holding power positions like Yellow Stairs for CEO and Radio/Pipes for garage defenses. And things went from manageable to worrying as they lost the next round, now being 2-5 down on the third and final map, but a big round in round 8 from Muzi with a double entry and Pino mopping up the pieces proved to be the start of a comeback, showing why these experienced, talented type players are so valuable, as they're not fazed by an occasion and can turn on the heat at any moment regardless of what the score is. So after a flawless round 10 to even the scoreline, the momentum seemed to be in N.I.P's favour once again, taking the next round, but BDS managed to fight to overtime, and at a 6-6 it was really hard to call. But honestly, over the 3 maps, I think N.I.P had spent more time in the driver's seat, and this favoured them as they just about managed to snag it in overtime with the back-to-back round wins after being up against match point at 6-7, winning both the next rounds comfortably and winning 8-7, knocking down BDS to the losers bracket. Something that impressed me throughout this series was the in-game adaptivity from N.I.P. They clearly reacted to what they were seeing in BDS and what they were doing and adjusted their strategies in the next round to catch them out. And because of best of 3, teams that are able to do this tend to have a lot more success as they have more time to study what the opposition are doing and adjust their plan. And honestly, if it wasn't BDS winning, I couldn't have been more happy for anyone else, as I fell in love with this team last Invitational and have been rooting for them in the last 2 BR6 seasons. I'm so impressed how they bounced back this tournament after a shaky stage 1. I really hope more people will watch BR6 stage 2 this season, as there's so many talented players and teams, even teams that didn't go to the Invitational. And N.I.P knew they needed to keep that upper bracket run going, because the amount of strong teams like TSM and Liquid that were being knocked down into the lower bracket, they knew that it was going to be a big ask for anyone to beat them and make it all to the finals, then still win with that 1 map disadvantage. The Ninjas were off to face FaZe in the upper bracket semi-finals, and it was set to be a banger. The last 3 times these 2 rosters had faced up, it was N.I.P coming out victorious, so there was a level of expectation heading into this game, and they didn't disappoint with a strong 2-0 victory in the best of 3. The matchup started in the cold city of Moscow at Cafe Dostoevsky, and N.I.P started strong on this map, finding themselves 4-2 up after their attacking half. And similar to the BDS game, we saw FaZe bring it back to 4-4, exploiting some overall weaknesses N.I.P had on defense, but the Ninjas did enough to shake it off and pull themselves together, winning the next 2 of 3 rounds, securing overtime if they couldn't close it out in regulation. And they did, winning the final round comfortably with a great VIP and coat check extension for a kitchen defense. And after a great second half by Psycho, specifically on the Vigil, who he often shines with, they closed out map 1 of the series 7-5. We headed to Villa next and we were treated to an absolute barn burner. After a huge triple kill from Souls, FaZe clawed themselves a second attacking round win, and we headed into N.I.P's attack at a pretty standard 4-2 split. N.I.P secured themselves another round, bringing the score to 5-2, and both teams traded around each, leaving the score at 6-3. N.I.P were looking to run away with the series. However, credit to FaZe as they managed to pull the score back all the way to 6-6 and force overtime. But N.I.P knew that they had to close this game out right here on Villa and no third map, as after losing 4 rounds in a row and going 6-7 down, the pressure was really on with their backs against the wall, almost losing 8-6, as somehow they clutched the 2v3 with about 25 HP between 2 players against 3 full health attackers with 3 of the best guns in the game, bringing the score back to 7-7. It was anyone's map at this point, but N.I.P narrowly secured a max overtime win, and Souls was oh so close to again getting a clutch and getting an ace this time to force a third map, but N.I.P knew that they couldn't allow that and had to shut it out now. Just about succeeding in their kitchen attack, winning Villa and consequently the best of 3, knocking down their Brazilian counterparts to the lower bracket to face Team Liquid. What I loved out of N.I.P in this game is how they knew what team they were facing and gave FaZe a taste of their own medicine. FaZe have been known this season to be very dynamic, often going for rushes and even in one occasion rushing 2 rounds in a row after completely failing the first one. Overall though, it has worked out quite well for them, and it was interesting to see N.I.P do the same to FaZe and see how they would react. And they struggled a bit to deal with Muzi specifically, making deep pushes into the bomb site or playing on an off angle that they weren't expecting. It was a brave strategy from N.I.P when you're deploying this strat against one of the best rushing teams in the world, but it worked, and sometimes you need to take risks if you want to separate yourself from the rest of the competition. I do think though FaZe are such a good team. I think something that stops them from being a way more dominant team though, and a cut above anyone else, is committing small mistakes. Sometimes their sporadic aggression is a bit messy, things like taking a part of the map without intel and getting punished, or small misuses of utility, but on the other hand it does work great for them most of the time. But yeah, a little bit more refinement of that, I think they could be such a strong team, even more than they already are. And both teams were set for a LATAM derby, as N.I.P had to get past MIBR next in the upper bracket final to reach the last hurdle being the grand final of the whole tournament. And MIBR didn't at all make it easy for them in an intense 2-1 best of 3 going all the way to max overtime on a third map. Plus the matchup started on Consulate, no better place to start a LATAM showdown. And really, with the form both these upper bracket teams were in the playoffs, it was anyone's for the taking. Even outside of their Invitational run, MIBR came second in the Copa Elite 6, so N.I.P knew how tough of a game this was going to be, and you could tell Pino specifically was fired up with a big quad kill in round 1. After a strong start from N.I.P going 3-1 up, MIBR pulled back to a 3-3 even half after a big impact performance from Felipox. However, N.I.P's Consulate attack started to shine through as they did a great job getting the entry kill, and as we know, when they get the opener and the man advantage, they often go on to have a successful round. However, this didn't end up being the case, as although they had some good executes and got the plant down, MIBR had excellent post-plant coordination with Raps and especially Lukid having some big rounds with a quad and triple kill each, disabling the defuse both times. But N.I.P continued to get that opening pick, and there's only so long you can fight from behind before you commit a small mistake with the counter aggression or miss a headshot and the man count starts to spiral. And at 5-5, their coach Bodega realized that, took a timeout, and in the next few rounds we saw them make sure not to commit any small mistakes rotating or over peaking, and they got themselves the next 2 opening picks. And similar to how the Ninjas succeed with their opening pick, they also often struggle when they lose it. And MIBR went on to win both those rounds and close out their own map 7-5 as we headed to N.I.P's map on Coastline. And now it was Kamikaze's time to shine, as he had an excellent game on support in their 4-2 defensive half, top fragging the whole lobby and outshining any player when they needed him most, being a map away from the losers bracket. We saw a few rounds traded back and forth and now found ourselves with N.I.P on match point at 6-4, and MIBR nearly pulled off another post-plant clutch, but it was Julio in a 1v2 with a big double kill to win the game 7-4 and take us to a best of 1 on Clubhouse to determine our first team securing their grand final spot. MIBR banned the Monty and the Clash, knowing how effective Julio and Kamikaze had been on both those operators. And early doors you could see how much was on the line for MIBR, as they somehow managed to win a 4v5 with 15 seconds left, only managing to effectively enter from blue with Felipox grabbing a huge double kill clutch with the pistol in the last second of the round, and this set the vibe for the map we were about to see. N.I.P just about managed to adjust in the second round after a good attempt from FaZe, collecting their first round of their own and going on to dominate on defense, Psycho specifically having another big game for himself with impact multi-kills left, right and center. But as I mentioned, this match also meant so much to MIBR and they weren't going down with a whimper, bringing the score all the way back to 5-5 and then taking us to overtime on the third and final map. This was it, some of the most pivotal 3 rounds of the whole tournament, as every kill, every impact trick, every mute jam drone might be the difference between giving you that extra map in the grand final, which could go on to be the defining difference that allows you to win that hammer. And with Liquid and TSM looking so strong, beating them and making the grand finals was a major challenge in itself. MIBR took the first round with a hero play by FaZe with the SMG and SAS shotgun reminiscent of J90 at the start of NAL season, and they were now 1 round away from the grand final, and even still had the favour of defense in their final round regardless if they won their attacking round or not. But once again, N.I.P showed why they were grand finalists last season and what experience can do for you, pulling the game back from the jaws of defeat being 4-5 down. As Kamikaze said to FaZe, "You're good with the SAS operators? Well, I'm even better," clutching a big 1v2 to keep them in the matchup. Now in the final round, it was time to see who was going to be the big player and fill those shoes. Rounds like these are the absolute top level of Siege. With so much on the line, every player is leaving it all in the server with some of the best strats in their playbook, as we saw Tachankas and Yings being brought out. But really though, it wasn't any hero plays, but more well executed strategy and good use of utility that was the difference maker, as N.I.P one-bettered themselves from last Invitational, coming from a map down to win the upper bracket final and get that extra map in the grand final. I think the amount of times N.I.P were able to get that opening pick in this matchup really hurt MIBR, as not only are N.I.P really effective with that 5-4 man advantage, but MIBR's playstyle was also massively weakened, as they love to double up and play into the trade game, forcing 2v1 gunfights even with minimal intel, and when you're playing at a man disadvantage, if your opposition reads into this, they can either throw bodies at it and also have that extra man to make a difference in a trade, in a team fight, or equally on the other hand, you can also not overcommit and go for objective based play, catching players on rotations much easier. Either way, it massively hurts MIBR, and credit to N.I.P for reading into this and exploiting it. And that fabled extra map ended up making a big difference in the grand final, as we went on to see an incredible 3-2 matchup against a tough opposition in the likes of Team Liquid. The game kicked off on Cafe and N.I.P came out the block strong on their attacking half, going 4-2 up, with every player contributing with impact kills and plays, no one lagging really too far behind and no one carrying solo. This boded well for N.I.P, as over a best of 5, you need every player to step up, as it's going to be inevitable that your top 2 performers on the roster are going to have a few quiet rounds, and you need other players to find those rounds for them, as we know that even just a few rounds on any of these maps could be the difference between being the world champions or just being the runners up. N.I.P took the next round, making it a dominant 5-2 at this point, so Coach Silence called a timeout for the Team Liquid players, as losing this match in this fashion was going to make the series a lot bigger of a challenge mentally and statistically. They attempted to reset and go again, but N.I.P threw a wrench in the plans and brought out the Clash, the ultimate tilter, and they burnt enough time for her to be fully effective and denied the plant going down. And now at 6-2, Psycho showed why he's one of the best Vigil players in the world, as N.I.P closed out the game with a huge quad kill from Psycho, sending a message to Liquid that they wanted this to be an open and shut affair. Little did they know that Liquid were about to tie up the matchup with 2 back-to-back map wins. As after a devastating Cafe loss, the pressure was now on for these experienced Liquid players to dust themselves off and get back in the fight on the newest addition to the map pool, Chalet. N.I.P started strong on attack again this tournament, picking up the first 2 rounds on attack with some great isolating and droning of the Liquid roamers and nice post-plant positioning. It's at this point it's looking really scary for Liquid, with the momentum clearly massively snowballing in N.I.P's favour, with Liquid not winning a round in 7 attempts since the 4th round of map 1, with attack and defensive losses mixed in there. N.I.P are in great form, just 5 rounds away from the ultimate glory, with enough rounds left to recover it if they started to lose a few. But Liquid, however, finally woke up at this point and broke the losing streak, with Nesk putting in good work with the P10 Roni and collecting a triple kill on a Rooney. And this was enough for players like Paulu to pick up on this energy and go on to spearhead the team to 4 round wins on the bounce. And at this level, mentality can be the majority of the difference maker, and it was clear and obvious to see how much it had swung now in Liquid's favour. N.I.P found 1 round, but the depth of Liquid's roster really shined through, as along with your typical banger performances from Nesk and Paulu, it was really players like PSK and Moringa who were the vocal point of their dominant 7-3 win on map 3, with some really important plays. The dream was now well and truly alive for Liquid as they had completely flipped the momentum in their favour, bringing the map scoreline to 2-1, looking strong going into a technical clubhouse to tie up the series. As for N.I.P, although they still had the map advantage, they were in dangerous waters as they could not afford to get tilted and put in another performance like Chalet, and honestly the same could be said for Liquid's performance on Cafe. Both teams realised that, as we were treated to one of the best maps of the whole tournament in a max overtime banger that Liquid narrowly secured. Liquid defended Clubhouse well in the first half, playing a great utility game and seeming to stunt N.I.P's attacks, as they would seem to have a disconnect between their early round and late round executes, and I think a big part of this was how much utility Liquid were bringing to the table. From electro claws to maestro cams to mute jammers, there was just so much for N.I.P to deal with, and we know they often execute in low time, so it was leaving them exposed to being flanked, C4'd, or just having to run into a crossfire. They had more success on sites like Master Bedroom, where Liquid naturally extended into cash, but the more anchor turtle setups were very successful for Liquid, and at 1-3 down, N.I.P's coach Meaty called for a timeout and said what he felt needed to be said to his boys, and after being in a 3-5 situation in the next round, Muzi, Julio and Psycho pulled off a beautiful split push clutch, completely catching Liquid off guard to secure their second attacking round. PSK gave a great effort at stopping them, but sometimes the smallest amount of time can be the difference between a free kill and a missed opportunity.
3 versus 1 as Psycho gets another on Tanesk. It's all down to PSK. 1 versus 3. Diffuser going down next to the A-bomb chassis. It's all for PSK. He finds one. Can he find a second? Yes, he can. Unbelievable headshot through the wall, Des. He knows the last in construction. He goes back in. He's got 30 seconds. He needs to find the man. He won't have an opportunity to disable this diffuser realistically. He's going to try and stick it. Julio's looking to find the angle. PSK comes off. Julio challenging in and gets the kill. N.I.P close out the round. Julio, as cool as you like.
The Ninjas looked to be back in their stride until they committed a huge blunder in the next round, which took away any type of momentum they had after the 3v5 clutch from the previous round. To paint the picture, in a very low time execute, with minimal plant opportunities, N.I.P have a 4v2 and they make the decision to push for kills, but questionably, instead of allowing Pino and Julio, who is way too far away to help to be honest, to push deep into sight and have Muzi cover the plant, Kamikaze with the diffuser enters from garage through CCTV into cash first and is gunned down, dropping the case in the doorway by Nesk, and he's able to pick up an easy double kill, winning the round on time, even a quad from Pino not being enough to save them from the mistake they had committed. We see mistakes like this from even the best players, but in a game of such high stakes, every error could be the difference between not only a map win, but a series win as a whole. This left us at 2-4 to Liquid, and they were clearly feeling themselves after that last round, as the Observer flew towards the building with Sexy Cake on blitz, and he did his job, completely reading and countering the dirt tunnel hold with smoke by Kamikaze, and collecting that oh so lovely hipfire kill with the pistol. N.I.P didn't seem to be too tilted however by that kill or the previous round, as Psycho pokeballed Sexy on the blitz back to the operator selection screen with a big double, helping them to win out that round and the following one, putting them even at the scoreline. Silence called another Liquid timeout as the momentum essentially broke even, both teams staying separated by 1 round at a time, all the way until overtime, with Liquid pulling out a flawless round on the attack to force 6-6 after being up against championship point. N.I.P had struggled to deal with some of Liquid's attacks in the later rounds, and the momentum transferred into the first round of overtime where Liquid's execute into Arsenal was unanswered, leaving them to need only 1 defensive round on their most preferred site in an attempt to finally get themselves even with N.I.P after 3 maps of fighting from behind. And once again, the delay game was too strong from Liquid, and even in 2v4 man count, a hero nitro cell with no time left was enough to secure the map for Liquid and take us to our final map of the tournament in a glorified best of 1. For N.I.P, from being 5 rounds away from winning it all, 2 maps up on Chalet, to being tied even in a glorified best of 1 going into Consulate, a strong map for both teams but especially Liquid, N.I.P could not allow themselves to lose from being ahead 2 years in a row. And something was awoken in the Ninjas' bellies as we saw 5 monsters in their final form show up for that last map and honestly completely dominate Liquid when it mattered most. Kamikaze kicked off the proceedings with a beautiful 4K and post-plant clutch, and Muzi 1v1 clutch in round 2, and in a 2v4 in the third round we got another 4k and 1v2 post-plant clutch, this time by Pino. And the clutches kept on coming, as after a 3k and defuse by Muzi and 2 big plays from Psycho in the following 2 rounds, they had known up to this point in the matchup that every round counted, as they refused to lose any round, down in manpower or not, and N.I.P now found themselves in the dream scenario, completing a flawless sweep on defense, winning 6 rounds on the bounce on championship point for a second time in the series. A 3k and 4k from Sexy Cake and PSK could only do so much to keep away the inevitable, as Paulu found himself all alone in a 1v2 in Archives, similar to his game-winning clutch in the Copa Elite 6 finals, this time against Julio and Pino, but a beautiful shot onto the Nitro cell from Pino was enough to cover the plant and force Paulu to peek into his crosshairs, securing the championship kill for the Ninjas in Pyjamas. They had finally done it. The dream redemption story had been completed and told, with a happy ending for the 2020 runners-up, now 2021 champions. And I just want to say, Psycho I think was really slept on this tournament. As one of the flex aggressive players on N.I.P, he is the glue that links up Pino and Muzi to Kamikaze and Julio, and I only found out after their post-match interview that he is also the IGL. Julio mentioned that it balanced out between the 5 of them, but honestly for some reason I always thought it was Julio who was the IGL, so finding out that Psycho is the IGL while still being such a vocal point round to round is very impressive. As Julio had said, he isn't scared to make some crazy plays, so being able to do that effectively without going too solo and quiet when it comes to your team needing input for shot calling is something only a top tier and experienced player can do at this level of competition. And this tournament to me shows how important every match is to stay in that upper bracket, as that one extra map that N.I.P got might have been the difference for Liquid in a close back and forth 3-2 win for the Ninjas. The mentality of these N.I.P players is so impressive to not only have enough in the tank to win every game in the upper bracket, but also still be able to come into this tournament so strong, considering after a heartbreaking loss to SSG last year and how they've fallen off the pace slowly in Brazil when it comes to majors, finals and finishing top in the regular season. I also find it really interesting how all of the top 4 teams, N.I.P, Liquid, MIBR and TSM, outside of Charla, haven't made any changes to their rosters since last invite a year ago. I think this really shows that sticking with a project has great benefits. And I also think one really big strength of the LATAM region we saw even more showcased at this event was the strength they gained from such a wide operator variety. Siege to me is a fine line between diversity and structure, and the LATAM teams fully understand what maps and sites require unexpected aggression and what ones you need to just execute a nailed on strategy to the fullest level. And it's no surprise that 2 of the most balanced teams in the region are the ones that make it to the final. There aren't many players in the Siege ecosystem that can effectively lean into both aggression and strategy in the way players like PSK, Julio, Sexy Cake and Kamikaze can, and when you have some of the best gunning duos in the likes of Pino and Muzi and Nesk and Paulu, you truly do have the full package. So yeah, massive credit to both teams and congratulations to N.I.P. As I mentioned previously, outside of BDS, I wouldn't have wanted any other team to win it more than the Ninjas. Since I saw Pino last Invitational running through the halls of Bordeaux with Buck and that skeleton key, I fell in love with this team, and it's been a joy to watch them the last 2 seasons of BR6, through the ups and the downs. I'm glad that they could leave their mark and a legacy on the history of Siege, and let's hope they can go on to leave a legacy similar to what G2 did, as a runners up and a first place at back-to-back SIs is no small achievement. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed Invitational this year, and I'm just so excited for the next international competition. Smash a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more similar content to this, and let me know in the comments who you thought was going to win and if you'll be tuning in to BR6 for the rest of the season. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.